Hi, I'm Rich Ribeiro. The Terrell Fund is committed to educating the public about the need to support New Jersey's infants and toddlers right from the start. That's why we're proud to support the important early childhood programming produced by the Caucus Educational Corporation.
This special edition of One-on-One with Steve Adubato is brought to you from the Tisch WNET studios at Lincoln Center. Funding has been provided by Wells Fargo, Berkeley College, New Jersey Resources, St. Joseph's Health, a passion for healing. It's what's inside us. The Terrell Fund, supporting right from the start NJ, New Jersey Sharing Network, dedicated to saving lives through organ and tissue donation. And by the Fidelco Group. Promotional support provided by Jaffe Communications, where business, media, and government converge in New Jersey. And by New Jersey Monthly, the magazine of the Garden State, available at newsstands.
This is One-on-One. I'm an equal American just like you are.
The jobs of tomorrow are not the jobs of yesterday.
Look at this. You got this?
Here it is, man. Look at it.
Life without dance is boring.
I don't care how good you are or how good you think you are, there is always something to learn.
Do you enjoy talking politics?
No.
People call me because they feel nobody's paying attention.
Our culture, I don't think, has ever been tested the way it's being tested right now.
Such a good question. High five.
Hi, I'm Steve Adubato. It is our honor and pleasure here in the public broadcasting family to welcome United States Army Colonel Jack Jacobs, military analyst for NBC News and MSNBC. Good to see you, my friend.
Good to see you, too.
What are you doing? You were just telling me you run every morning.
I try. I'm not always successful, but I try to get out and run as often as I can.
Well, I would just say this. For a lot of years now, you have been providing perspective and analysis for a lot of folks, regardless of their political ideology, that helps us understand the world of the military and the world we are in. Right out of the box, how would you describe the relationship, as we do this program during the holidays of 2017, the relationship between the president / the White House and the military?
Tenuous and maybe even tortured, depending upon how you look at it. There is a link between the White House and the military officers who are serving the president very closely, the Chief of Staff, Secretary of Defense, and so on. But the real problem lies in the inability of the White House to have a really clear strategic vision that is able to be executed by the military establishment. That's a problem.
Because? Well, what do you think the disconnect is? A, is it the strategy itself? B, is it the communication of whatever strategy may exist in the first place?
Well, in this regard, this White House is not a whole lot different from other White Houses. There is no real strategy, as one would define it, but the previous White Houses haven't had strategies either. We're in a very difficult situation at the moment. We have fragmented threats. There are lots of them. They're all over the place. And we don't have the ability to deal with them in any kind of coherent way. And as a result, and by the way, we're doing it with far fewer resources than we have in the past.
Because?
Well, we don't have the political will to have a large military establishment to take care of our enemies. I know we're spending a lot of money, but the Army is about as small as it's been since 1940. I remember some years ago, when I was still in the service, we were talking about having a 600-ship Navy, and we got pretty close. We have fewer than 300 now. I know that our capability is much better now. Technological capability is much better now than it used to be. But our problem still is that we don't have enough people to actually execute. I recently talked to a whole bunch of people who are in the special operations business, which, by the way, is at the cutting edge of what we're doing in the world. They're all on their umpteenth tours of duty. They go out, they come home, they go back out again. We're really stretching our military capability to the limit.
So Jack, excuse me, Colonel.
Jack's okay.
Jack, let me ask you, who is enlisting these days and why?
We have a relatively small number of people enlisting. And what we've done is reduce our demand by artificially reducing the number of people we really need. So it makes it look like we're doing lots better than we are. We do have very, very small services, and they're coming from disparate locations. Make no mistake about it. We're getting people from cities and from towns and villages and hamlets all over the country, but there are not enough of them. I'm reminded of the Seinfeld episode in which we was talking about the inability of the car company to hold the reservation. We can take objectives, but we can't hold on to them because we don't have enough people, enough resources to do it. We're relying much too heavily on technological means for achieving our objectives. And at the end of the day, we're pretty good at blowing people up and buildings up and so on, but we can't hold on to objectives.
You know, when we talk about the kinds of things that you're talking about right now, when we talk about them, it's I'm not going to say risky, because we hope and pray, which is not a strategy, that whether it's North Korea or other places around the world, that we are not engaged, but we don't know what's going to happen. To what degree do you believe, so I keep thinking about this, our president, President Trump, who has a tendency to say what it is he wants to say very publicly via Twitter/social media, are there significant military implications from your vast and impressive experience just in having the commander-in-chief communicating in that fashion about these things?
Well, it's unseemly for him to do that. I'm reminded of the...
Why not? He's respectfully, Jackie says, I'm just saying what I think.
Yeah, well, I mean, he's in charge of the most powerful country on the face of the earth, ostensibly. So you have to choose your words carefully. And it makes it extremely difficult if you're public all the time to try to get things done behind closed doors, which is where they're supposed to be done. I'm reminded of the observation of Woodrow Wilson, who once wrote, what we really need are public pacts publicly arrived at. Well, he was half right. We certainly need public pacts. But the only way you're going to get them is to arrive at them privately.
Because?
Behind closed doors. Well, once you start talking about what you're going to do, once you start talking about what your objectives are publicly, you're rooted in them, and it's much more difficult to conduct any kind of negotiations. There's nothing to trade away once you said, I'm going to do X, and X is what we're going to do. It makes it extremely difficult to get involved in any of the nuances, which ultimately wind up in a solution to a problem. So talking publicly about everything is not a good way to get to the end.
You know, it's interesting. One of the things that we talk about a lot, and we're doing a series. Check out our website. We'll put it up right now. It's just simply steveadubato.org. We're doing a series on American veterans, what they need, what services are out there for them, and how to connect veterans to the services that are out there. I want to talk about Gold Star families for a second. Your thoughts when the president said what he did about the Khan family during the campaign. Your first reaction and your reaction today?
Well, it diminished him, to be sure. The
Khan family lost their son, who was a hero.
It diminished Donald Trump. I mean, you can't say
in Afghanistan?
Yes, I think it was Afghanistan.
I'm sorry, go ahead. How did it diminish him?
Well, it made him look silly, and you can't have somebody who's at the top of the food chain in the world's most powerful country look silly, sound silly, and be silly. And nobody agreed with him. I mean, he was on his own there. All that notwithstanding, it didn't stop him from continuing to say silly things about people about whom we have a much higher regard than he does. John McCain.
Just gonna, by the way, we hope and pray for John McCain and his family. He is not well as we do this program. I believe the president said, "Why are we calling him a war hero? I respect those who were not caught."
Yeah, and I know people who spent time at the Hanoi Hilton with John McCain.
6.5 years.
A long time, being in solitary confinement often, being tortured every day or every other day, and still being able to rise above all that to become and act like honorable people. I think it's dysfunctional to castigate people like that who've obviously demonstrated their love for their fellow man and the love for their comrades in the way that they did.
Where do we go from here, Jack, in terms of, if someone were to say, you know what, say they voted for President Trump, but are rooting for him, as all of us are, because that's rooting for the country.
We don't want the president to fail.
Because we want the country to succeed. But that being said, what advice would you give the president that you would hope he would listen to as it relates to his interaction with the military and as it relates to activities that involve the military?
Well, on the one hand...
If you said, Jack, what do you think? What should I do?
Be quiet. One good thing to do is to be quiet. You can get a lot more done if you're quiet in public and really busy behind closed doors. I know I often give advice to young soldiers, and they ask, what's the best advice you can give me? And I say, I'm reminded of the observation of Oscar Wilde, who, when asked a similar question, said, be yourself. Everybody else is already taken. But in the case of this president, I think it would be best not to be himself and instead to be president.
Before I let you out, national anthem. Athletes and others, many, opting not to stand.
Yeah, I think that's silly, too. I mean, they're entitled to do whatever they want to do.
But
I think it diminishes them as well. And if you asked a lot of them, what is it that they're protesting, they wouldn't be able to articulate it in a way in which anybody could understand. Well, I mean, this is a free country, and I fought, and a lot of other people fought so that people could say anything they wanted to. And to that extent, the athletes are not only allowed to, but encouraged to say or demonstrate any way they want to, but it would be worthwhile if they understood what it was they were saying. And it's not the same thing to all people. A lot of people who would otherwise support them in their views, in their protest, don't think of them very kindly.
Colonel Jack Jacobs, I want to thank you for adding to this conversation, offering your insight and perspective. People can catch you on NBC and MSNBC as well.
Thanks for having me. Thanks for having me.
Good to see you, buddy.
Good to see you.
Take care.
Yes, sir.
Right back right after this.
To watch more One-on-One with Steve Adubato, find us online and follow us on social media.
Steve Adubato here in Atlantic City at Atlantic City Convention Center. This is the 2017 NJEA Convention, the 164th time this has happened. We are honored to be joined once again by the Executive Director of the NJEA, Ed Richardson. Good to see you, Ed.
Thank you, Steve. Thanks for being here.
We should say we're taping this just a few days after a historic event in New Jersey. There is a new governor coming in, Phil Murphy. Thoughts about that?
He was just here. And
he was just at the convention.
He was at the convention. He stopped by, delivered brief remarks to a packed audience right here on the exhibit floor. His voice is a little wavering, as can be expected, but it was truly energizing. And I think our members are genuinely looking forward to working with new leadership in New Jersey. He's got some bold ideas, particularly about education. He said this morning, job one is that we need to fully fund our schools, which has not been done in the last 8 years. He did. And
what kind of reaction did he get?
Standing ovation. Everyone spontaneously stood and applauded that, because our members understand that for the last 8 years, our schools have been desperately underfunded. And yet, through their perseverance, our schools are still top performing in this nation. And so that's just, it's a testament to the work of our members all over the state.
By the way, when we interviewed Ambassador Murphy, candidate for governor at the time, we talked about this issue, pension issue, which we'll talk about with that in a second. And also talk specifically about where the dollars would come from, just a minor issue. But that's all important. And we'll also be talking to him when he takes office and deals with the governing side of things. But let's talk about this piece. I want to get to the convention in a second, but politics is something that the NJEA is involved in many ways. The number one thing is to be advocates for teachers, for educators, but you pick your spots. When you make a decision with the Senate president, which we talked about last year, right, to get involved in that campaign, explain to folks the rationale.
Well, first of all, it's not my decision, or even
the organization.
Right. We have elected leaders who come together in a screening process, and then an even larger body, 125 members, who vote on those decisions. And over the course of his time in the Senate, there have been times when we have endorsed Senator Sweeney, times when we have not. And but there have been major decisions that have taken place directly affecting our members, directly affecting their work with students, directly affecting their pocketbooks. And time and time again, they've been disappointed by many of those decisions. And so, not an easy thing, obviously, to to go into a campaign where we've endorsed the opponent of the Senate president, but that decision was made and we stood behind it. Now, in talking with our members here,
yeah, what's the attitude?
They get it. They understand that we had to take a stand.
Was that what it's about, taking a stand?
That's what it's about. It's about again, advocating for the interests of our members, advocating for the interests of our public schools, and sending the message that we're just not going to allow those interests to be constantly undermined. That when we need to, we absolutely will stand up for our members and our students in our schools.
A couple of things to disclose. The New Jersey Education Association is a major underwriter of public broadcasting in the state, of our programming, and I just want to put that out there. Ed, but let's stay on this whole question of involvement. So interesting. Explain to folks that, how many members is it, over 200,000?
Over 200,000, yes.
The leadership of the NJEA, right? You're on the staff side, you've got this terrific group of people moving up on the elected side. The decision-making process, how do you engage folks with such a large constituency?
I often describe this as sort of painfully democratic because...
Painfully?
Yes, because running a democratic organization of that size is difficult. And yet, that's been our tradition, that's our history. Tomorrow, our policymaking body will meet. They meet 5 times a year. It's, again, another group of 125 people elected by members from all over the state. And they come together and they set the positions on all of the key issues.
How spirited the discussion?
Sometimes vary.
Different points of view?
Different points of view, obviously. You mentioned that, I'm on the staff side of the organization, but I'm accountable to an elected board of members. We have an executive committee of 28 people, again, elected.
You answer to them?
I answer to them. I'm appointed by them. They approve my contract. So we are a member-governed organization, and we never forget that. And our elected leaders, the 3 full-time officers, elected at large by the members of the organization.
So the president, the vice president, and the secretary-treasurer?
Correct.
Well, so let's do this. If you were, in terms of agenda, you did talk about fully funding, but I want to move to the other question. I shouldn't say the other question as if it's so obvious. We were here with Ed last year, and we did talk about the pension crisis. Mm-hmm. Is that the right word, crisis? The public employee pension crisis. Is it the right word?
Depends on how you look at it. Is it a crisis in that it's going to run out of money in a year or two? No. We have forestalled that to some degree with some of the funding that's been appropriated. But in a broader sense, yes, because every member of NJEA, every public employee, we always say has never missed a payment. 7.5% of salary comes out of the paychecks of every one of our members every pay period. And over the last 20 years, the state has just uniformly failed to meet its obligations.
Sometimes called a pension holiday.
Pension holiday,
really,
I think that's a euphemistic term.
Yeah. What does it really mean?
It's an abrogation of responsibility is really what it is. And not just us saying that. Governor Christie's own Pension Study Commission said that over the course of multiple administrations, multiple legislatures over the last 2 decades, that the state has just failed. And
what happens, sorry for interrupting, Ed, what happens when that happens?
Well, essentially the contributions of the employees just aren't adequate to sustain the fund, and it does eventually run out of money. Now, so that's a very scary thing, not just for the people who are relying on that for their retirement security. That's a scary thing for the state of New Jersey, because the state Supreme Court has repeatedly affirmed that those people are entitled to those benefits no matter what. If the state were, if the state had to pay those obligations directly out of the state budget, it would cripple the state, and no one wants to see that happen. So we need to get back to responsible funding. We can do that. We can transition into it and get to full payments and get the system healthy again so that we never have to worry about that day.
Off of politics in the time we have left. This convention, I've often asked you this. What does it represent?
Professional development. You're here on the exhibit floor, and there's great energy here.
What else is going on around here?
Go up the 2 levels above us, 250 workshops over 2 days. everything from classroom management, special education, math workshops, language arts workshops, science teaching workshops.
New ways to teach. New ways to teach.
New ways to teach, new ways to sharpen up on delivery of content. You name it, it's here.
It's interesting. We meet
and here's the other thing. It's all free.
What do you mean it's all free?
Well, if our school districts were to attempt to replicate the professional development we are delivering here, it would cost the taxpayers millions of dollars. And yet, our members are here when they could be doing something else.
They're not, excuse me for interrupting, they're not mandated to be here.
In some cases, a district requires them to bring back proof of attendance. So if you're coming here, you have to demonstrate you were here.
But most who come here are a part of what goes on.
Exactly, exactly. And so they're here to learn. They're here to learn how to become better educators.
Final question. The biggest misconception, I ask you this every time, but I still want to get at this. The biggest misconception about educators is?
I think it's that whole, 9 to 3, summer's free mantra. I don't know a member who only works from 9 to 3. And in terms of the summer's free, well, our members only get paid for the time that they work. More than 2/3 have other jobs. And what's really exacerbated that is a law known as Chapter 78.
Yeah, we talked about that before.
Right.
Real quick, what that is?
It basically forced massive employee healthcare premium shares on our members. Completely cut through collective bargaining and any other process. It's just state law requires you to pay X. Now, this is a profession that has already been identified by the Economic Policy Institute as behind their peers on a total compensation basis by 10%. All in, when you factor in differences in the work year, differences in their retirement security, and 10% behind. And so members are hurting as a result of that. Many of them taking home less net pay in September than they took home in June. And we have to change that.
And so look, so you're saying in the new administration, in the new government in Trenton, you're looking to change this?
Yes, absolutely.
Thank
we
you.
just need to level the playing field.
We appreciate you joining us. We appreciate the NJEA allowing us to be here at the 164th annual convention. And
well, we very much appreciate you being here. Thank you again, Steve.
Well done.
To see more one-on-one with Steve Adubato programs, visit us online at steveadubato.org. If you would like to express an opinion, email us at info@caucusnj.org. Find us on Facebook at facebook.com/Steve Adubato PhD and follow us on Twitter at Steve Adubato.
When you come to the Sharing Network 30th anniversary event, you meet some amazing people. Diane and Tina have a special connection to this event, but more importantly, to the gift of life. Talk about it.
Well, Tina's mother needed a kidney, and we were good friends for 35 years. None of the family was a match, so I decided to come forward, and I donated my kidney, and there's no better feeling in the world. The people that get an organ, they say they're receiving a gift, but the gift is all mine.
When the decision was made to do that, what impact did it have on your family?
My whole family tried to give our kidney to our mother. We loved her. She was our world. And when none of us were a match, Diane came forward, and my mother reluctantly said, I don't want to accept that kidney. I love you. You're like a daughter of mine. I don't want to put your life at risk. And Diane said, well, Pat, if you won't accept it, I'm giving it to somebody else.
You actually said that? I'm sorry, you said that. Why did you say that?
Well, because we had been interviewed by a few facilities, UPenn, St. Barnabas, God bless them.
That's right.
And after you go there and you realize what you can do for somebody, it's an amazing feeling.
No, but hold on. Why did you tell Pat, your mom, hey, I'm doing it anyway?
Well, because so she would accept.
You don't know Pat Troeba.
You knew that would have an impact?
Yes. My mother was selfless. Everything was for everybody else. And she was
this going to be a tough interview with both of them at the same time.
Yeah.
What was she saying?
She was saying to me, what if your daughter or your son or your husband needs a kidney? And I said, well, then somebody else will step forward, but right now you're the one that needs the kidney. And you know what? There's very few of us that can go through this life and know what our purpose is, why God put us here. And believe me, when you give life, there is no better joy in the world.
Tina, let me ask you this, the message you want to deliver to everyone watching right now about organ and tissue donation.
People need to learn about it. When I talked to Diane about her experience and the fact that she said, Tina, I didn't even have pain going through this, and that the other kidney that's in her body is growing to be twice the size to be able to handle what her body needs. It's amazing. And I think people that do it are selfless and wonderful people, and I've learned so much, and I've forever be in debt to this organization.
Thank you to both of you.
Thank you very much, Steve. It was nice to finally meet you.
One-on-One with Steve Adubato has been a production of the Caucus Educational Corporation, celebrating over 25 years of broadcast excellence. This special edition of One-on-One with Steve Adubato is brought to you from the Tisch WNET studios at Lincoln Center. Funding has been provided by Wells Fargo, Berkeley College, New Jersey Resources, St. Joseph's Health, the Turl Fund, supporting Right from the Start NJ, New Jersey Sharing Network, and by the Fidelco Group. Transportation provided by Airbrook Limousine, serving the metropolitan New York, New Jersey area.
Hi, I'm Cecilia Zalkin. It costs much more to care for an infant than for an older child, and many New Jersey child care centers don't have the funding they need. Because of this, many children in New Jersey don't have their basic needs met. Right from the Start NJ is dedicated to supporting this vulnerable population, children from birth to age 3. We know that the early years are the most critical, and we believe that every child deserves a bright beginning and a healthy future.